finally we reach the the main view of expression, and whether or not expression is fully being um, reached its potential due to language. Because language is the most accepted form of expression. That's what I feel. We have other forms, we have art, and we have various other avenues how we can express ourselves. There's physical forms of expression. We can express anger through aggressive actions. We can express love through certain gentle actions, and we don't have to say the word love at all, and so on and so forth. But expression is probably the most it carried out most using language, as a form of governance, administration, organization, the way society is functioning, the way people are going about things. We need to add more structure and more um, organization to the already well established language that we have, and it is becoming more and more complex as we move forward. And so now, if John Locke, for example, says that uh, the perspective and the empirical world that there is, the experience that one might have, gives rise to his opinions and his thoughts and his states of mind, and it in turn creates the personality that he is, then probably what we are doing now is that we are looking at the world going through a uh, strange time when it was still in development when it came to language. Now it's fully developed, and yet we are turning it more complex and more um, structured and organized. Maybe when we apply the John Locke philosophy to this, we can say that we are already looking at a world that is limiting itself um, in terms of language, and so hence we are limiting ourselves, and hence our understanding of language is already limited than what it was. And so inadvertently our way of expressing ourselves becomes limited. um, that is just a result of this notion that because we have meaning um, infused into our minds about certain things, that is the only vocabulary, or that is the only repertoire, for example, of words and of meanings and all of truths and of all these factors that we have in order to express ourselves. um, so maybe what I posted has its truth. It is not to say that we are receding in any forms of communication, and in fact communication is getting better, but it's just the way that um, human life, it's not a way man thinks about himself. I think it's just the way that human life is thinking about itself, and it is expressing itself, that is being um, limited. My cryptic tweet on Twitter um, should not be absolutely agreed upon. It should not be rigidly accepted. And what I'm just saying that, in over the course of time, like, for example, let's just say it has come down to this. Let's just say that you're saying something to somebody. You're trying to interpret something that you have in your head, like a thought or an epiphany or something like that, and you're trying to uh, transmit it to the other person. Now you're not going to get to that other person's mind unless you have a magic power or something. You're going to say it, and you're going to express it through words, and then the other person is only going to understand it in terms of their perspective and their um, understanding of the world. Now whether it's a literature piece or some form of poetry or something, it's always going to be something that will pass through that filter, and then go to the mind, and then come out. And in such cases, what happens, I mean, this is just a one person to one person type of a thing, but now to a certain level where there's manipulation, there is influence, there's so much power and authority in the world, you actually end up thinking that on a large scale this creates a lot of limitations, um, perhaps for not for human progress in terms of quality, but just human progress in terms of time. and whether politically or whether socio-psychologically or whether evolutionary, it's there, and it persists. And the power of ideology and the power of groupism and the power of all these sort of boundaries that we've set ourselves that make us so different from our ancestors, um, slowly take over the gift for language that we have. And that being said, language is a gift. We can, it should be, in whatever state it is today, however it might express thoughts in our minds, it has to be faithful to the past. It has to be um, it has to be sensitive to the present, and it has to be hopeful for the future. And that's the role of language, and that's the role of this sort of landscape of language that we have upon ourselves. And of course, we are the only species, because we went over the genetic side of it, the gift for language. We went over the various thinkers that put forward their theories and their thoughts about language. But we can also say that through all that, and through the spectrum of that, ours is the only species that will have the gift of perhaps choosing an alternative to language while expressing ourselves. Maybe we say things and we think, well, the other person is not getting it. We can always have another way of expressing ourselves. And we are the only species that can do it, to be honest. Maybe other species will do it like visually or physically or whatever, but um, we can actually create art, or we can actually enable the other person to um, sort of stimulate a part of their mind that thinks about life in a more deeper way, where uh, deeper meaning is attained, and maybe higher forms of truth are arrived at. And so, of course, it limits expression, but we have so many avenues, it hardly ever will be a problem, and we'll continue to evolve with that in our minds. Thank you. This was a two-part video, and lots of thought, maybe 2 months of thoughts, and then perhaps 2 or 3 days of just reading material. Thank you for watching. You can subscribe and share this. First part will be in the description, and keep coming back.